The Pacific has always been a graveyard of secrets. Storms rise without warning, waves swallow entire fleets, and islands shift on maps like restless ghosts. But in 2022, a reconnaissance satellite operated by a multinational task force captured something that defied logic, a landmass that wasn't supposed to exist. Between the Marshall Islands and the Philippines, an area surveyed, charted, and flown over thousands of times before, there appeared a dark blot of land. Roughly 20 kilometers across, crowned with jagged cliffs and wrapped in storm clouds, it was a place that simply had no record in modern history. At first, analysts dismissed it as an error. Satellite glitches happen. But when 3 separate passes revealed the same outline, alarm bells rang. Naval intelligence wanted answers, so they formed a small expeditionary team. Captain James Rourke, U.S. Navy SEAL, mission commander. Hardened, skeptical, but secretly haunted by years in Afghanistan. Dr. Elena Ramirez, Spanish archaeologist, civilian consultant, brought on for her knowledge of Pacific World War II battle sites. Lieutenant Kenji Sato, Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, quiet, disciplined, carrying the invisible weight of family history. His grandfather served in the Imperial Japanese Army. Corporal Michael Mick Harlan, U.S. young, brash and reckless, with a nervous humor that masked his fear. Petty Officer Claire Donovan, communications specialist, calm under pressure, obsessed with recording every anomaly. Their orders were simple: land, survey, identify. If the island was real, explain why it had been missing for 77 years. The crew set off aboard the USS Pathfinder, a sleek grey reconnaissance vessel outfitted with radar, sonar, and enough firepower to repel pirates, but hardly suited for major combat. As the sun dipped into the ocean, Rourke gathered his team on deck. "We'll hit the coordinates by dawn," he said, his voice gravelly from years of barking orders. "Intel wants photos, samples, whatever proof we can get. But let's be clear, this place shouldn't exist. That makes it dangerous." Mick smirked nervously. "Come on, Captain, it's just a rock in the middle of nowhere. Probably some coral reef that popped up after an earthquake." Sato cut him a sharp look. "Coral reefs do not sprout overnight. And if this island is what I think it is..." He trailed off, staring at the horizon, where storm clouds pulsed with flashes of unnatural lightning. Ramirez adjusted her glasses. "What do you think it is, Lieutenant?" Sato didn't answer. "Not yet." As night deepened, the Pathfinder's instruments went haywire. GPS coordinates scrambled, compasses spun uselessly, and radios picked up faint, crackling transmissions. At first, they thought it was interference. But then Donovan froze, her headphones pressed tight to her ears. "Captain, you need to hear this." Rourke took the headset. Through the static came a voice, raspy, broken, but unmistakably human. "Tenno Haika Banzai," the cry of Imperial Japan's soldiers, last heard in the Pacific almost 80 years ago. Ramirez whispered, "That's impossible." And yet as dawn crept across the sky, the island appeared before them, cliffs like jagged teeth, jungle canopies writhing in mist, and the unmistakable outline of structures on the shore. Watchtowers, trenches, a base frozen in time. Rourke exhaled slowly. "Strap in. We're going ashore." The forgotten island had awakened. The landing craft bumped against black volcanic sand. The air was heavy with salt and decay, the kind of oppressive humidity that made every breath feel stolen. The team fanned out, weapons raised, eyes scanning the tray line. The beach bore the scars of battle, rusted landing craft half buried in sand, Japanese helmets cracked and overgrown with moss, and barbed wire sagging across forgotten bunkers. Yet something was wrong. The footprints, fresh human footprints, crisscrossed the beach, dozens of them leading from the surf into the jungle. Mick knelt, touching the impressions. "These aren't old. Somebody's living here." Ramirez frowned. "Impossible. No one's been stationed here since the war. It's not on any maps." Sato's hand tightened on his rifle. "Not impossible. My grandfather told stories. Units that refused to surrender. Soldiers who fought for decades on isolated islands. Some were discovered as late as the 1970s. Donovan muttered. "Yeah, but not in the 21st century." They pressed inland, moving cautiously. The first structure they encountered was a wooden barracks, its roof sagging but walls intact. Inside, cots were neatly arranged, uniforms folded with military precision, and on one cot lay a journal, its pages yellowed, but the ink disturbingly fresh. Ramirez opened it. Her face blanched. "It's dated April 3rd, 1944. Rourke's jaw clenched. "That's not possible." But before anyone could argue, the sound came. Boots, marching boots, the steady rhythm of soldiers on the move, echoing from the jungle. Rourke raised a hand. Positions. They crouched low, peering through broken shutters. Through the mist emerged figures, dozens of them, Japanese soldiers, in full uniform, rifles slung, eyes forward. Their movements were precise, mechanical, and as they passed, the team saw their faces, skin pale as wax, eyes clouded with a faint, unnatural glow. Dead men, marching. Sato whispered in horror, "Kami-sama, they're still here." The deeper they pushed into the jungle, the more the island revealed its nightmare. The vegetation was thick, strangling the old paths, but every few hundred meters they stumbled on relics, artillery pieces fused with vines, ammunition crates stacked as if waiting for soldiers long gone, and radio towers still crackling faintly with static. And always, the sense of being watched. Ramirez pointed to a tree trunk. "Look, scratches, kanji characters. Carved into the bark were the words, Yor no Tatakai, the eternal war." Donovan shivered. Who carves that 70 years after they're dead? Suddenly, gunfire erupted, not aimed at the team, but somewhere deeper in the jungle. Bursts of Arisaka rifles, the echo of machine guns, war cries, screams. The team froze. "That's combat," Rourke said flatly. "Somebody's fighting right now." They advanced toward the noise, hearts pounding, but when they reached the source, they found only emptiness, a clearing littered with skeletons, Japanese and American alike, locked in eternal combat poses, and yet the air still vibrated with echoes of the fight, like a battle replaying itself beyond time. Mick whispered, "Are we walking through a recording?" But Ramirez shook her head. "No, this isn't a memory, this is a loop." Sato stared into the mist, where shadows of soldiers flickered in and out of existence. They never stopped fighting. The war never ended here. And as the jungle swallowed them deeper, the team realized the truth. The Forgotten Island was not just a place. It was a battlefield that refused to die. The team's boots sank deeper into the mud as they followed the ghostly trail of footprints. The jungle canopy overhead grew thicker, blotting out what little sunlight managed to pierce the mist. Every few steps, Captain Rourke raised his hand, signaling for silence, listening for the faintest sound of movement in the distance. It wasn't long before they came upon what looked like a series of trenches, partially collapsed, yet still intact enough to reveal their original structure. The wooden supports had rotted, but the overall design was unmistakable. These were World War II defensive positions. "Jesus," Mick whispered, crouching to run his fingers along the damp earth. "These things should have caved in decades ago. Look at that sandbag still holding shape." Ramirez crouched beside him, brushing moss away with her gloved hand. "Not possible. Burlap would have disintegrated years ago in this humidity." She tapped the sack with the back of her knife. It made a muffled thunk as if the cloth was fresh. Sato approached one of the wooden bunkers. The door was hanging open, its hinges rusted but intact. He pushed it with the barrel of his rifle. The door creaked and revealed a cramped shelter, lit by a faint glow. Inside, on a crude table, sat a radio set, its dials faintly humming as if it were still drawing power. Donovan rushed forward, setting her headset over her ears. "No way, it's on." Through the static, muffled voices spilled out. Male voices, speaking Japanese. She adjusted the frequency, and the words grew clearer. "Enemy patrol sighted. Defend the Emperor. Never surrender." Her eyes widened. She glanced up at Sato. "What are they saying?" Sato translated in a whisper, his jaw tightening with each word. "They are reporting American troop positions. They believe the war is still happening." Suddenly, from outside the bunker, a heavy thud echoed. Then another. Rourke spun, rifle raised. At the far end of the trench, something moved. A figure crouched low, helmet tilted, face obscured in the shadows. The shape shifted unnaturally, like a man who had forgotten how to be human. Then it stepped into the light. His uniform was Imperial Japanese issue, tattered, soaked but preserved eerily well. His face, however, was pale, lips drawn back to reveal teeth that seemed too many. His eyes glowed faintly, as if lit from within. The soldier raised his Arisaka rifle, but not to shoot. He held it like a ceremonial staff, and in a low, broken voice, he whispered words that sent a chill through the air. "Senso wa owaranai. The war does not end." The silence shattered. From the jungle behind them, more figures emerged. 20, 30, maybe more, all in the same tattered uniforms, some missing boots, others with rusted helmets fused to their skulls. Their movements were stiff, jerky, yet relentless. Mick's voice cracked as he raised his rifle. Captain, orders, hold your fire." Rourke snapped. though his finger itched against the trigger. He scanned the soldiers. None of them looked fully alive, but neither did they collapse. They were animated, eyes glowing faintly, their faces a mixture of decay and flesh. Ramirez whispered, These aren't ghosts. They're corporeal. They're here." The figures stopped just meters away. One of them, with a sword rusted to near ruin, stepped forward. His lips moved, but when he spoke, the voice came out layered, like multiple men speaking in unison. "You, Americans, surrender." Rourke's heart pounded. "That's impossible," he muttered. "They can't know English." Sata swallowed hard. "No, they learned, or something taught them." The soldier raised his sword, and the others followed. For a long second, nobody moved. Then one of the phantoms screamed, a sound that rattled the very air, as if it were half human, half metallic. The jungle erupted with movement. Rourke gave the order, "Contact front, engage, engage." Gunfire cracked. Muzzle flashes tore through the mist. Mick's machine gun roared, spitting brass casings onto the mud. The spectral soldiers staggered as bullets punched through them, yet they didn't fall. They kept coming, their bodies jerking unnaturally, wounds glowing faintly instead of bleeding. One of them lunged forward with a bayonet, nearly skewering Private Harlan. Rourke shoved him out of the way, firing point blank into the soldier's chest. The thing collapsed, only to rise again, slower this time, as though pulled up by invisible strings. "Captain," Donovan shouted, "they're not dying." Ramirez's eyes darted to the strange radio. "It's the signal," she said urgently. "It's keeping them active. They're locked in time." "Then shut it off," Rourke barked. Ramirez rushed to the table and smashed the device with her rifle butt. Sparks flew, and for a brief, breathless moment, the glowing eyes flickered. A few of the soldiers stumbled, falling to the ground, but most of them stood still, their heads twitching toward the team like predators catching a scent. Sato's voice was barely above a whisper. "We need to leave, now." But the jungle was already closing in. "Ron." They fell back through the jungle, weapons raised, but no matter which path they took, they always circled back to the same clearing, the same rotting barracks, the same broken radio. The mist clung to their skin, thick and metallic, smelling faintly of rust and blood. Donovan's headset crackled again. This time, the voice was clearer, less static, more deliberate. "Hold your positions. Reinforcements are coming. The Emperor commands it." She yanked the headphones off, trembling. "That voice, it's not coming from the radio anymore. It's in my head." Ramirez knelt by the shattered machine. Inside the wreckage, instead of wires, she found something organic, veins, pulsing tissue woven between metal coils. She gagged. "This isn't just a radio," she whispered. "It's alive." Sato's face was pale. "In 1944, my grandfather's division was sent to an island, an experimental site. He never spoke of what happened, but in his letters he wrote about a kami, a spirit, that promised them eternal victory if they submitted." Mick's hands shook as he reloaded his weapon. "You mean they made a deal? With what?" Sato didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the jungle, where the pale soldiers were standing still, watching, waiting. Suddenly, one of them raised a hand and pointed toward the ocean. The others followed in unison. The team turned. Through the mist, the outline of a massive structure rose from the shoreline. At first it looked like another bunker, but as the fog parted, the truth became clear. It was a pyramid, black stone, slick with ice and salt water, towering above the treetops. Its surface was carved with symbols, some Japanese, others older, stranger. At the top, a faint red glow pulsed like a beating heart. Ramirez's voice trembled. "That's not man-made, or at least, not by any men we know." Rourke clenched his jaw. Intel wanted answers. "Well, we've got them, and I don't like what I'm seeing." The soldiers in the jungle began to march again, this time not toward the Americans, but toward the pyramid like moths drawn to a flame. Their glowing eyes reflected the crimson light, and their chants rose with the wind. "Banzai, banzai, banzai." The sound rolled across the island, a chorus of the forgotten. And for the first time since setting foot on the beach, Captain Rourke felt something he hadn't felt even in Afghanistan. Not fear of death, but fear that death itself had no meaning here.
Sleep was impossible. Each time one of them closed their eyes, the island found a way to invade their dreams. Ramirez woke up screaming, clutching at her throat. "He was right there," she cried. "My brother. He was in the trees. He told me I left him to die." Donovan shook her. "Ramirez, listen. He's been gone for years. That wasn't him." But the damage was done. Ramirez sat awake, rocking back and forth, her eyes darting toward the door. She whispered prayers under her breath, her voice cracking with desperation. Mick, pale and sweating, stared at his bandaged shoulder. "I can feel it," he muttered. "Something crawling inside, like it's not my blood anymore." Rourke knelt beside him, trying to keep his voice steady. "Stay with us, Mick. We're getting out of here. Command knows where we are." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it.
Their radio calls had been answered only by static, or worse, by voices from another time. As dawn broke, the team moved again, determined to reach the pyramid. The jungle opened into a wide clearing where the ground was littered with helmets, rifles and bones half buried in the soil. Some of the helmets were American, some were Japanese, others belonged to armies Rourke didn't recognize, strange symbols etched into the metal, languages he couldn't identify. "This isn't just about the war," Sato whispered. "This island, it's been here much longer than any of us. It's been feeding for centuries." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. The sand shifted, and for a moment Rourke thought it was an earthquake. But then he saw it, skeletal hands clawing their way out of the soil. Soldiers, long dead, rising once again. Their uniforms were in tatters, their eyes glowing with that same unnatural red light. The Marines opened fire, mowing them down, but the bodies didn't stay down. They twitched, convulsed, and pulled themselves upright once more, as if the laws of life and death meant nothing here. "Fall back," Rourke shouted again, though he knew there was nowhere left to run. The island had them trapped. At the foot of the pyramid, the team finally stopped. The soldiers, those pale, undead remnants of another war, were gathering in formation, their chants rising into the fog like a dirge. At the center of the gathering stood the officer with the half-rotted face. He raised his sword high, and the red glow from the pyramid pulsed brighter, matching the rhythm of their chant. Donovan whispered, "They're worshipping it, that thing at the top." Ramirez's flashlight beam cut through the mist, illuminating strange carvings on the pyramid's surface. They weren't just Japanese characters. They were older, sharper, curling into symbols that hurt the eyes to look at. Sato stepped closer, his voice trembling. "These are not Japanese. They're kanji, yes, but twisted, like someone tried to mimic them without understanding their meaning." The chanting grew louder, the air vibrated, the ground trembled. Then, from the top of the pyramid, something began to stir. A shadow detached itself from the stone, rising taller and taller until it towered above the trees. Its eyes burned like twin suns, and its limbs stretched unnaturally long. The Japanese soldiers dropped to their knees, bowing in perfect unison. Rourke felt his throat go dry. "That's not a man. That's not even human." The figure lifted its head, and the jungle went silent. The air grew colder, frost forming on the edges of leaves despite the tropical heat. And then, in a voice that echoed across the island, it spoke. "The war continues." The team had no choice. They opened fire, every weapon unleashing hell. Tracers streaked through the mist, slamming into the towering figure, tearing through its flesh. But instead of blood, dark smoke poured from the wounds, twisting into the air like serpents. The smaller soldiers rose again, advancing with bayonets raised. Kincaid charged forward with a roar, mowing down line after line, but they just kept getting back up. One soldier's head snapped sideways, nearly severed, yet he still moved forward, chanting with a mouthful of broken teeth. Mick, delirious from fever, stumbled to his feet. "I'll hold them," he muttered, shoving more ammo belts into the machine gun. His hands bled as he fired, his body shaking violently. "Go! Get to the boats!" "No!" Ramirez screamed. "We're not leaving you." Rourke grabbed her arm. "We don't have a choice." The team dragged Mick toward the shoreline as he kept firing. The red glow from the pyramid pulsed faster, like a heartbeat quickening. The massive shadow let out a roar that shook the earth, and the jungle seemed to close in. They reached the beach. The boats were gone. Only broken wood remained, scattered across the black sand. Donovan stared in horror. They sank them. They knew. The soldiers emerged from the jungle, forming a wall between the team and the water. Behind them, the colossal figure loomed, its red eyes burning brighter. "This is it," Rourke said, chambering his last round. "We hold the line." The war had come back to life, and now, so had the dead. The battle was chaos. Gunfire lit the night, tracers streaking like fireflies across the black sand. The Marines fought with everything they had, rifles, grenades, even their knives when the ammo ran dry. But the enemy would not fall. Rourke struck one of the soldiers with the butt of his rifle, shattering its jaw. The thing stumbled, then righted itself, whispering through broken teeth. "The Emperor commands!" Ramirez screamed as she was dragged into the fog, her voice cutting off in an instant. Carter tried to chase after her, but was tackled by two soldiers, their hands clawing at his throat. Donovan was the last to hold the radio, her voice trembling as she broadcast into the void. "This is Echo Team, grid coordinates, requesting extraction, immediate. We are under attack. Repeat, under attack by..." The radio cut to static, and then through the static came the same voice they had heard before, calm, unyielding. "This is Captain Miller, 30 men, pinned down, requesting extraction, coordinates." Donovan dropped the radio, her face pale. "It's us," she whispered. "They're hearing us."
The last thing the recorder picked up was the sound of hundreds of voices, Japanese and English alike, screaming in unison as the red glow consumed the beach. When the USS Hawthorne returned the following week, the island was gone. Nothing but open water stretched across the horizon. The coordinates were empty. Official reports stated the team was lost at sea during a storm. Families received folded flags, carefully worded letters and silence. But in the years that followed, fishermen in the South Pacific began whispering of strange transmissions caught on their radios, broken voices, calling out across the static, echo team, requesting extraction, enemy forces, heavy casualties. The war never ends. And somewhere out in the endless blue, beneath the waves or behind the mist, the forgotten island waits. Its soldiers still march, its drums still echo, and the war never ends.
Subscribe now and uncover the mysteries that were never meant to be told.